Morning everybody. Right, so today we're going to try and rebuild the rear axle, put in the brake slave cylinders and put on some of the brake pipes. I'm also going to assemble the shoes in place, although when I offer it back up to the axle I'm going to have to partially dismantle those, because obviously I've got to put the handbrake cable onto the bottom of the brake shoes. But I just want to assemble it all myself and get used to actually putting them apart, put them together and taking them apart. So these videos today really centre around that. I'm not going to do videos on doing or making brake pipes. There's plenty of those on YouTube. I've been watching those, and what I'd suggest is that you have a good watch of a few of those and get yourself the tools to do the job. But this is just basically me showing you how I'm going to be forming some of the pipes and putting the things together. Alright, here we go. Now there are a multitude of these brake pipe flaring tools out there. This one's actually by Sealy, and for what I'm needing it for, this is perhaps ideal for the job. I've got 4 or 5 ends to make, and this is really it. Now you can buy pre-made bits of pipe at set lengths, if that's your thing, but I want this to be a little bit more bespoke, so I'm going to make my own. Basically what we've got here is a pipe cutter, flanging tool and the jig, along with the dies here. We're on the smaller one, so this little die, and as you can see that's quite a narrow little bit of kit. All of the videos that I've seen said you really need to be careful with this, because if that tip breaks off, then obviously it affects the ability to do the job. One thing this doesn't provide is a little pot of grease. What you will find is that on some of them they do provide that. There's different ones. There's a hand one that you can actually use up underneath the car. Although I've got quite big hands anyway, I can actually use this without mounting it in a vise, but it is recommended it goes into a vise. I don't have one. All right. So what we've then got is I've obviously disassembled the brake assembly unit. I washed it down in a bit of gunk so it's nice and clean to use. We've previously painted up in various places, and I've put on the first part, which is the slave cylinder here, and that is actually secured by a small bolt at the back. These are not supplied with the cylinders, so you need to try and get them out of the original if you can. This one's out of the original, one of the original axle assemblies, and this one's got a star nut on it as opposed to a hex head. Come off relatively easy, so that's good, and a nice new bead nipple on there as well. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is actually try and assemble the brake assembly here. I've ordered new pads and new springs and bits and pieces. What you might find, doing what I've done, is I've actually kept the original brake assembly as near to complete as I can when I took it off, and I took a couple of photographs. Alright, so let's have a look at what I've done in a couple of minutes. So the benefit of working with new equipment is obviously it's a lot cleaner and easier to put together, particularly if you're a novice like myself. So new slave cylinder or brake cylinder, new brake pads, new springs and clips, all the bits and pieces all replaced, and the whole assembly is all nice and clean. You can virtually eat your dinner off of that, and obviously make it very pleasant to work on when we come to bleed the brakes. Okay, so brake rebuilding handy tips. Number 1, when you've got these new pads on or shoes on, when you try and slide the hub back on, what you'll find is, because you've got an increased amount of friction surface, it's going to be much harder to get your pads, get the hub back over the top of the pads. So these are self-adjusting on the back here when they're working fine. Now basically when this lever is pulled and it makes all of these actually expand out, what it does is it can work this little ratchet. This bit here staying perfectly still, this will gradually wind this out, making this bit a little bit wider here. So this is actually threaded. So when you're putting these back together again, if you wind this back so it makes this bar short, it will close the distance between the two pads at the top, and it will mean that you can slide the hub on a bit easier. When you pull up the handbrake, that will adjust this by clicking the ratchet. It's amazing stuff, really. Okay, so starting to make the brake pipes. What we've got, you're never going to actually factory replicate all these real sharp bends that we had on the original piece, much like this. But what we can do is we can make it very, very tidy if we want. The biggest problem that you've got is putting a bend in that copper pipe without kinking it. You kink it and basically you've got to start again. So what I've done is I've measured out the original copper pipe that we had here, the original as a template, to get the similar sort of length, and then I've put on one end, and basically I've started to try and just form the correct shape that I'm going to want, and I know there's going to be a little bit of excess at the end here. Now I'm going to be able to cut this back and put an end on it, and know that I've got a bit of kit here now that will actually fit, and if I'm say so myself, it's quite a tidy little bend. Now what I've done to actually form it round something is I've got this rather large socket, and gently just tease it round the socket. This is a 3/4 socket. You could perhaps use something a bit bigger. I wouldn't necessarily say get anything any smaller. It will put a kink in it, but we've got some nice bends. Keep it away from the metalwork, and obviously free from anywhere that's likely to be fouling. So the next bit that you'll see is when I've got this then connected to the flexi hose. Okay, so all the pipe work in, nicely following the line using the clips that we've got here, not actually touching the chassis member itself, or like to go anywhere where there's any moving parts. Up to flexi cable or flexi pipe. Flexi pipe's all fitted, ready for the next little bit. So that's that side done. And I've got to say, very satisfying to actually end up to that point. I know all the shoes and everything have got to come off again, but basically I've trial fitted it, so it's a bit of practice for me. I've now just got to do the other side. So got to say today, big sense of achievement. I know for some people this is easy peasy stuff, but I'm quite worried about making these brake pipes up. Quite pleased with the outcome of the work actually, and the way that it looks. Obviously the test is when we get some brake fluid in it, whether the things actually leak. But it's nice to actually have a working axle assembly, which is something which I can actually offer up to the car when the weather allows. So today we're going to be putting the rear axle up, connecting up all the rear brake lines, hanging the suspension, and trying to tidy up the welding work that we've already completed, getting ready to seal up some of that work and make it presentable for MOT. Here we go. Okay, so the axle's been offered up this morning, and basically that's the reverse of taking the thing down. So trolley jack in the middle, and lifting the item up. We've offered it to the securing posts at the front of the axle, both sides, put the pins through, don't put the bolts on yet, and lifted it up, shock absorbers then to hang it at the back end, making sure the springs are in, along with the springs being the right way up, and with the rubber mounts on as well. Good opportunity to check your chassis mounts at the top there. I've given mine a coat of Hammerite after scraping off a little bit of flaky rust, so try and future-proof it. And then bolting it all together, just down there, bolt for the shock absorber. So it's now all hanging. Tighten that up, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to work from this side and work round to the other to make sure that we're all up and running. So I've taken the hub back off. So what a day we've had today. Mostly just refitting bits and pieces. So I've got the vehicle now back together. The axle's on. The handbrake is now connected. All the brake pipes are actually connected in place. Although I've not actually bled the brakes yet. I've got a friend of mine coming around to help me with that. Knows a little bit more than I do. I have adjusted things up so the handbrake actually works. So that's a bonus. Bumper's back on, and I've just started to tidy things up. Now I've got some paint coming just to do the repairs around the wheel arch edges, but for now I've blacked them up just to give them a little bit of protection. So I'll give you a little bit of walk around what we've done, and you can see from there the steps that we've made in, I'd say, just over a week of playing with the car. So the rear quarter panel's repaired, and obviously the axle's been replaced. Back panel's been done, new back panel's back on, and bumper's been rehung. There's the ring thing. And the brake pipes all been replaced, rear axle all painted up, boot floor repaired. I'll get to seal that. Going inside, all been put back together again for now, and primed, ready for a little bit of dark green paint to finish off. And the wheel arch on this side, pretty much the same as I said on the other side, just blacked it up to give it a little bit of protection. I've got some green paint coming along, and I'll give that a little lick over, just so it looks nice until we get the vehicle resprayed. Now, what a lot of you perhaps don't realise is that I'm 56. I have a major walking issue, and I've also got leukemia. So what I have discovered lately is I've started to get rheumatism in the hands, which is causing me some grief here. So up and down, up and down. I'm not the fit lad that I used to be. That said, I've real sense of achievement today to get the vehicle back to the point where it's actually going to be standing back on the ground, and outside of having the brakes bled, we're pretty much well forward where we were the other day. Now I've also discovered some extra holes in the sills, so tomorrow and the day after I've got sills on both sides of the forward jacking points to actually have a look at, and then I'll be on the front end. And I would say from that point, it's a question of just getting the brakes done, and we'll get it up for an MOT. So we're not far away. Speak soon. You know what I'm going to say now, guys. If you like what you've seen, you'd like to know more, or you want to follow the progression of my little car, then feel free to subscribe, or leave us a comment, or send us a message. Either way, love your feedback, love to hear from you, and looking forward to doing the next one. Speak soon.